morning, everybody. How you doing today? Today I want to talk about political correctness a bit. Especially this year at my school, I've heard more and more comments about the problems of being politically correct. I hear it a lot from adults, the problems about being politically correct. Some of that's not new, some of it is, and I want to talk about it a little bit today. My thoughts on it, why I think it might be a worthwhile thing. So, way before the election, I had people complain about a PC culture. Hey, you can't say that, it's not PC. And they're very mocking toward the whole idea of something being politically correct. But before I wanted to say anything about it, I'm like, I should probably make sure I know what I'm talking about. So just for a fun little Google search, I'm like, define political correctness. Here's the basics of it. Being politically correct means you take intentional action to avoid saying things that marginalize or insult or demean groups of people. So even in the definition, it said that often it can be taken to extremes, and that's where I think a lot of the problems begin. Nobody likes to be policed. Nobody likes to be kind of beaten up a bit for saying things that they didn't even know were not okay to say. As we kind of move forward, I'll talk more about that. So here's the deal. I first heard about PC culture, political correctness, in regards to race. You have Black Americans and you have African Americans, and which one do you say? Anymore, it's a toss-up. It seems like now you can go with whatever, but there was a clear point in my life where it's like, no, you don't say they are black, you say they are African Americans. And it was a big deal. A lot of people talked about it. A lot of people would look at you weird if you didn't say African Americans. And as a white guy with a conscience, I worked really, really hard to make sure that I stuck to the politically correct ideal. Because, and this is why I think it's important, I need to realize that my life is not the same as everybody else's life. I need to realize that some people see the world differently than I do, and I need to realize that just because I don't see the problem doesn't mean that there's not a problem. Because a lot of my life has not put me in contact with a lot of the big problems that people might have. So, that's why I give it some merit. That's why I give a lot of things merit. When something new comes up and people are like, that doesn't seem right, I'm like, well, hold on. They're coming from a different place. They might have a perfectly sound and reasonable reason to think that way. So I should probably listen to this. It reminds me of, it's an essay called This is Water, and I have forgotten who wrote the blasted thing. I'll put it in the description. But This is Water is this really cool piece that takes the concept of not knowing what we're really in. It starts with this weird little anecdote of a couple of fish swimming through the water, and this other fish swims by these other two fish, and he's like, hey boys, how's the water? And they're like, and then they stop and like, wait, what the hell is water? And the point is, as fish, they just go about their lives. They don't think like, oh, this liquid thing that keeps me alive is water. They don't know, because they just live through it. He takes that and builds this analogy of basically the rest of our lives, of when we go to the store, when we drive down the freeway, when we interact with students, when we interact with anybody, we don't know what's really around us. We can guess, we can make assumptions, but most of the time, we just kind of cruise through life thinking only about ourselves and not about anything else that's going on. The obvious problem with that is you've only thought about yourself and you haven't thought about other people. So on that, I will make this claim as well. When you are policing a politically correct culture, it basically kind of signals you as somebody with a fair amount of privilege. It is a privilege to police that, because if you've got the time, the energy, and the resources to do that, then you're doing okay. This is something I tell my students, and I want to be careful with it, because I don't want to oversimplify something, and I certainly don't want to trivialize anything. But when we talk about gender, when we talk about race, and we talk about privilege, I often have to kind of as an in, I have to talk about it in terms of, listen, is racism like it was? No. We're at a better place now. However, it's not fixed. It's not done. People still have biases. People still have prejudices. And those biases and prejudices, they still come out in really obnoxious ways for a lot of people. And because that still exists, that's why it's still worth the conversation. Have we made improvements? Absolutely. And the same goes for gender. Like, we've made drastic improvements, but we're not there yet. And so we talk about things sometimes that seem kind of silly and kind of trivial. And it's just that idea of like the project's not done. You know, if I was building a table and I almost finished it, and I looked at it and said, well, it's more of a table than we had before, and I just kind of like start eating on it, but it's all wobbly, and like the one leg always falls off, so I have to catch it and put it back on. It would be obnoxious. It would frustrate me. If somebody else had given me that table and like didn't leave me any tools with it, I'd be mad with them. Like, why would you give me this junk table that can't even stay together? And that's kind of how I feel for a lot of equality issues. It's like, have we made improvements? Drastically. Huge improvements. Huge. But it's not fixed. It's not there. So when it sometimes seems like something is very trivial or very nitpicky, it's because the table's not fixed. Is it workable? Can we live with it? Well, it depends if you're the one eating at the table, if you're the one who just demands that, yeah, it's finished, just enjoy it and shut your mouths. If you had to eat at it, you'd be mad too. That's why political correctness can seem very petty and seem very strange, because for a lot of us, it seems like it's fixed. I frequently have people like, oh, really? What's the one area that such and such a group doesn't have equal rights? And what's the one group that's really being discriminated against all the time consistently? How many examples do you need? Because there's a ton of them, right? So, why is political correctness a good thing? If political correctness is about avoiding the intentional marginalization, insulting, demeaning, all that other stuff, if we're intentionally avoiding that, that can't be a bad thing. If your goal is to marginalize people, if your goal is to separate them out, to talk about them in ways that could vilify or demonize or even just invalidate them and their ideas, then that's not okay. As human beings, they deserve the decency of having their voices heard. Now, can political correctness go too far? I suppose. His son, Max Brooks, said a really cool thing about political correctness where, paraphrasing, when we are overly politically correct, sometimes we don't call out issues as they are. We can walk so carefully around certain issues that we don't name them for what they are. That's a big deal. If you've got an honest, legitimate issue and problem, then you need to call it out. That's a challenge, I think, for a lot of us. It's a challenge for me as, you know, a white guy with a conscience. Because I trust and I believe and I kind of look at things as I don't know stuff. And because I don't know stuff, that was a weird thing to do. Because I don't know stuff, I try to give as much time, effort, energy, and validation as I can toward new voices and new stories and new lives that I'm unfamiliar with. I have to assume that I don't know everything. What was I talking about? I literally forgot why I just said all those things. I bet it was important, so think about that. So can it go too far? Possibly. You know, if you're avoiding issues because you don't want to talk about the challenge of it, then yeah, that can go too far. But let me throw one more thing out there. This is kind of, I think, the path we need to think of in kind of fixing the damage that the PC police have done. I like being politically correct. I think it's important. I think we need it. But I do think that how harshly it has been policed is a challenge. So, here's how we move forward. A year ago, I was teaching a unit on gender in one of my classes. And we were talking about feminism. And a student asked me if I was a feminist. And I said, yes, I am. And they were like, but you're a man? How does that work? And another student, like, freaked out, like, oh my God, like so annoyed that some other student didn't know that men could be feminists. They were angered by it. They were angered by somebody's, what do you want to call it, ignorance, or just they were oblivious, who knows? But they were mad that they didn't know. So they didn't know. Who cares? Okay? The best path forward for a lot of us is to be gracious toward people who just don't know. And a lot of people don't know. I called out one kid not too long ago because he was using the term gypped. And I remember when gypped came into my vernacular, and the awareness of gypped, that it, you know, was speaking directly toward, like, as of like gypsy people, and it was a derogatory term toward gypsy people. And I said, you know, it's kind of like saying you got Jude, and that's not okay either. He just didn't know. He's like, really? I said, yes. So maybe think about not saying it, because that's actually, you know, I wasn't mean about it, I don't think. And that's the thing. A lot of times people say it. I was listening to a podcast, and Kevin Pollak was on it. And, you know, I don't know too much about him aside from some of the movies he's in, but he had a really great way of talking about this as well, which was just like, when you say that, it can be misconstrued or misunderstood as meaning this thing. Did you mean to say this thing? When someone says something that seems politically incorrect, or they say something that seems out of place, or if they say something that almost sounds mean or racist or sexist or any of that, maybe that should be our first step. Do you mean this? Because it kind of sounds like that. And if they say, no, I didn't mean it, then kind of let them know. It's like, you know, it's because of these things that could be seen as misogynist, or that could be seen as racist or misogynistic. People need to know, because a lot of times we don't. So we move forward in grace, we speak in love, and that's the best way to do it, I think. Maybe because that takes a little less energy for me than something else, but that seems selfish. What a terrible way to end. Why do I end these things so terribly? Okay. Big finish. 20 mile an hour on the freeway. Here we go. Being politically correct. It's important because when you are intentionally avoiding marginalizing, hopefully that means that you are intentionally engaging in inclusivity, in bringing people in understanding another person's way of life, and understanding another person's story. To recognize that your story is not the only experience and the only truth in this world is to acknowledge that other people have valid ideas, valid beliefs, valid struggles, and valid pain. And when we can acknowledge all of that, what we do is we build a world that is much more loving, much more accepting, and much more allergic to hateful, mean-spirited, marginalizing speech and action. So go be a kind, loving person. Be gracious to yourself, be gracious to others, and we'll see you next time.